welcome. It is time once again for CU Immigration here on WRFU LP, Urbana, 104.5 FM. I will be your host for this evening. My name is Mr. Garza, and I'm here to let you know, turn that down because it's feeding back, that WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign community. Views expressed are those of the speakers, yes they are, and they are not intended to represent WRFU, UCIMC, or the Urbana Socialist Forum, or, as we like to say on the TV version of this show, UPTV. These views are our own, and by our in this instance, I mean myself and my charming guest who will introduce herself now.
I am Valeria Bonatti. I'm a PhD student in the Department of Sociology, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign.
Aha. And we were just talking about sociology just a second ago.
Yes, we
But
were.
I'm not going to grill you on it now because you said you didn't want to talk about it on the air. So.
I did say that.
But I thought that it was interesting. It was very interesting.
Okay.
So if I were to describe what we were saying that sociology is sort of the study of large groups of people, right? And institutions is what we have a hidden guest over here who may or may not be drawn into the conversation, but occasionally we may refer to him or her. We will not out them at this moment, but yeah. So is that more or less correct?
Yes, that is more or less correct. And if I may add on what our conversation was about, the differences between anthropology and sociology. Thankfully for all academic communities, I would say, there is a lot of overlap between the two disciplines. I myself consider myself as an ethnographer. My way of doing research, my favorite way of doing research is, just to go hang out with people in a particular more communities and talk to them, observe them, and try to figure out their real experiences of big hot topics of public opinion like environment, immigration. And I do have good friends and colleagues in the anthropology department, definitely.
Okay, so you're not at war with anthro.
Absolutely not.
That's good. So when you say ethnographer, I'm reminded of what seems like the direction of the sciences for years and years and years, or at least Western science, I'll put it that way, seem to be towards, what is the term, positivity? Like being...
Positivism?
Positivism, yeah, thank you, where like everything had to be quantifiable in some way and testable in some way. And so it seems like maybe in the last, 10, 20 years, some of the disciplines like anthro and it sounds like sociology are sort of moving the other direction and going, okay, wait a minute. That's, there is value in the human experience even if you can't test it, if you can't prove it. It still means something. There's something there. So can you comment on that shift? Are you...
Sure. I mean, I would say that is correct. We definitely think that there is a value to human experience, even the ones that we cannot quantify or measure with, a plain number. I believe it was Watson from the DNA, Watson and Crick, who said you don't know anything about something until you can pin it down on a number, and I beg to disagree. But there's also another aspect that I think draws me in particular to qualitative methodologies, which is, sometimes measuring things with a statistics or a similar method is just not feasible, not effective. One of my earlier projects in the Department of Sociology was looking at domestic violence among undocumented migrant women, and a study like that, especially for a grad student who's just starting and so cannot command the grant money or whatnot that would be necessary for a thorough study, well, the best you can do or the best way to go about it is probably just talk to the few people who you're able to recruit and gain trust from for such a sensitive topic and start from there.
Yeah. So how do you control for the difference in perspective and point of view? And like, for example, there are three of us in this room right now. We may be having three completely different experiences, at the same time. Like you might ask me, and I'll be like, "Oh, we had a lot of fun. And it was great." And I ask you, it's like, "God, it was so annoying. I just wanted to hit the guy." And ask him, he's like, "I was so bored. I was about to fall asleep. I don't even know what they were talking about." And all of those are valid. I mean, that is my experience. I'm actually enjoying myself, but you know what I mean? How do you keep from going too far the other direction and just sort of like, well, this person said they saw a flying saucer and then there were sea serpents, so I guess there must have been. How do you
Balance?
straddle the fence, or whatever you want, the gap between hard science and whatever you call ethnography,
The two methods I trust the most is, first of all, look for patterns and stories. So when I was in Naples more recently, just about last year, interviewing migrant women in domestic work about their experience with recycling, in a city where trash management is so problematic. I knew I was onto something when the stories I was hearing started to look similar or started to look alike. So I don't want to say, you hit the jackpot when you start to see patterns and repetitions, but you're definitely onto something. And I don't think there's a way we can completely control for our biases, but I think that as a researcher, being very clear about who I am, what brought me to do a certain study in a particular place, and even give a hint of what my worldviews are, will at least give a reader the possibility to judge for themselves if what I'm doing is, just propaganda, or if there's actually a merit to the research underneath.
So you're talking, what is that, reflexivity?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Hey, I was trying to avoid jargon.
I'm sorry. I didn't. Is that jargon?
No, I don't know.
I apologize to the
I don't
listener.
know anymore.
Whoa, every time I hit this, it's like,
Yeah.
it's really loud. Sorry. Forgot what I was going to say. I guess it depends on what you're studying in particular. Like, this would be a good time for you to explain what your specific area of study is.
I study both migration and environment, and the way I go about it is to look at this, big buzzword, also known as the green economy or sustainability. Although, especially in the EU, they were advertised as, the future, the economy of the future, the high-tech, clean, safe, sustainable new forms of employment. The hard reality is that a lot of the jobs that are coming out of it are dangerous, demeaning, and underpaid work that mostly migrant workers are taking upon themselves, as few non-migrants are actually willing to take them unless there is a union contract involved underneath, as, for example, is the case with trash collection in Naples. So my interest for environment and recycling comes from, being in Naples, being a Neapolitan-born woman when pretty much every other corner was ablaze with burning garbage and as pretty violent riots were coming out in the peripheries, especially not so well-to-do rural areas where the government was trying to install new incinerators, new landfills. I have to say, pretty obsolete infrastructure in an attempt at solving this ongoing problem of criminalization and trash collection. So the first thing that kind of struck me, and we're talking back in 2008, I didn't even have a bachelor's degree yet.
Way back then.
Was that although a lot of the politics and a lot of the popular discourse was around what can households do, what can small businesses do to start recycling more, to start wasting less, and so on, women's voices were pretty much absent. from these conversations, in spite of the fact that, the bulk of housework in Italy, I want to say particularly in southern Italy, falls upon women.
Okay.
So at the beginning, I didn't even realize I was going to bring in migration. But then I started kind of looking around more carefully at who was doing the work of recycling and who seemed to be struggling with it because of street harassment, but also lack of infrastructure. And it turns out that, okay, I'm going to use statistics.
Okay, good.
At least 50% of the time,
Yeah.
just based on my observations, they were migrant women.
Uh-huh.
They were migrant domestic workers, huddling big bags of recycling from businesses or from homes all the way to wherever the closest available recycling station would be.
Can I sort of interrupt for a second
Of course.
and take a sort of a step back? Can you give us a sense of what, because I'm finding it difficult to understand how people are involved in this. So there is no, like here in the U.S., or at least I won't even say in the U.S., here in Champaign-Urbana,
Sure.
we have different businesses that collect trash. And most of them collect recycling at the same time. So when you move into a house, you say, okay, I need a trash collector. You look in the phone book, you find one, set up a thing, and they come once a week and you put your stuff out. They take it away and they do something to it. Most of us don't ever see what they do. It just goes away. And we're happy with that.
Okay.
How is that different from the area you're talking about?
Thank you so much. That's an excellent question. So in the area I'm talking about, most trash collection tends to be under a municipal monopoly.
Okay.
So there's one public-private or just public company in charge of everything,
Okay.
from trash collection to providing recycling bins in the area. I think the biggest difference I've noticed since I've moved to the United States is that trash collection and collection of recyclables is not necessarily door-to-door. So here in the U.S., we just take things basically downstairs or outside our homes. And as you said, we forget about it. In a lot of neighborhoods in Naples, not all, but in most of them, you actually have to figure out where you need to take your plastics, where you need to take the glass, what time of the day you can take the garbage out.
So it's not at your house. It's like on the corner of 1st and 15th Street, there is a bin for
Yeah.
this, and there's...
Yeah, for
Okay,
all
I
of the
get it.
recyclables. Then the landfill is still, I don't want to say door-to-door, but almost. Let's say one per block, something like that.
So everyone shares. So it's like an apartment complex here might have a single spot that everybody brings,
Yeah.
all their trash to
But
this
that's
one
just,
spot.
yeah, but that's just for landfilling
Yeah.
in Naples.
Okay,
The recyclables you actually have to find, you have to look up or you have to call and figure out where you can bring your plastic, where you can bring the glass, what you can do with furniture, electronics, and hazardous wastes.
And then so migrants kind of make a business out of doing that for you. They say, hey, I will pick up all your stuff and take it for you. You don't have to worry about it. You give me 50 cents or whatever.
No, it's just being incorporated into part of the work they were already doing, cleaning businesses or cleaning apartments or cleaning homes.
Oh, and that just becomes an extra thing.
Yeah,
like,
it's just become an extra chore,
Okay, I
and
got it.
unfortunately, as I've had the chance to realize, it's generally not a paid chore.
Okay.
It's just another item on the task list.
So when you get done with the carpets and clean the couch, then, oh yeah, by the way, take the recycling
Yeah, wherever it is they have to go.
wherever
yeah.
it's got to go. I
Yeah.
can't be bothered with it. So this
Yeah.
is your job. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
now. Okay, thank you.
No,
I didn't mean to
thank
interrupt
you.
you, but I
Oh,
was like
absolutely.
trying to figure out how people were involved in
And
it.
thank you
Okay.
for that. No, it's actually very helpful.
You're welcome. So I'm sorry, I
So-
probably broke your train of thought altogether.
Yeah, no,
so
no,
you were
no, I'm
studying.
fine. So as I was looking at how various communities in Naples were going about handling this burdensome and tiring work of recycling, because, I mean, let's face it, walking with bags of plastics or glass, especially on a hot summer day for a few blocks, is a pain.
Oh yeah.
I noticed that a lot of this work was falling on migrant women, and which is, yeah, how I started to look at the two issues combined. Migrant labor as one of the key contributors to social reproduction, but also to environmental sustainability. Sorry for the big words.
No, they're not. I'm thinking. I'm thinking how this all fits together. So, have you looked in other areas to see if this is similar, if this is just a local phenomena? Is that true in other countries and other parts of the same country? How does this map out around the world?
Okay. Yeah, I focused mostly on the region of Naples as my main site. I am starting to look at things in Champaign-Urbana too as well, and as I'm starting to engage with migrant workers in recycling, and this is really the initial stages of a project. I'm also kind of going beyond only women's experiences, and also thinking about, men in agriculture, men in industries, as you said, to broaden the perspective a little bit.
Well, it's just interesting because if you think about how people divide up labor everywhere, it's different in different places. Some places it's all. This word seems uncomfortable to me, but it's all professional. It's like people who are in the business of doing this sort of thing. In some places, it's just like you just get somebody and they do stuff for you. So it's like I hire you and I say, okay, today I want you cutting my hedge. Tomorrow I want you painting my house. The day after that, who knows? We'll figure something out. In other places, it's like you hire a painter, you hire a landscaper, you hire something. People are more. Roles are more delineated or more carefully delineated or something. So I would think it would be difficult to kind of follow this over in a large area just because of that.
Yeah, which I think is what made it, further convinced me to focus specifically on the area of Naples and surrounding towns, just to try to have at least a little bit of consistency in the setting. But, when you were mentioning professionalism, I want to say that most of the migrant domestic workers or personal assistants I came across and who kindly agreed to be interviewed, they definitely identified professionalism in what they were doing, in their efforts to of course, comply to what their supervisors and their employers' directions were, but, many of them also were taking the time to read, were taking the time to share information with employers and colleagues about, okay, so where is the plastics recycling station today? Because unfortunately, they get removed pretty often. The infrastructure is work in progress, but was definitely not optimal. Not at the time I did my interviews, at least. So there is definitely a professional engagement with, of course, with their work in general, but also with this aspect of recycling.
Now, are these people that were in their country of origin had other professions that they're not able to practice in their new country because of accreditation or whatever?
Some of them were nurses in their home countries and were struggling to get accreditation as nurses in Italy, because I believe, I'm 80% sure, the number of practice hours for nurses in Italy is about 500. On a pretty low stipend, while I think Romania, which also is considered a pretty pretty demanding in that sense, is only up to 300. So it's very difficult for a migrant worker to get, the financial and social capital to put those additional hours in, on top of that, and having to do exams and whatnot. The way that they are marketing their skills as nurses, nonetheless, is in elderly care.
Ah, okay.
Which
Clever.
was, a bit one of my long time coming yet unexpected finding. So, many women, of course, who are nurses in their home countries are finding employment as live-in personal assistants to semi-independent seniors. And, of course, having a nursing degree from your home country makes them particularly desirable workers. The families, the adult children, or the siblings, or the spouses are, pretty confident that someone with a nursing degree can administer pills effectively and safely, can have a sense of when to call the doctor and when to, just help the person rest. So, so many nurses are finding a job as officially personal assistants and in elderly care, but however, many of them find that, once they start working, the job isn't really what they signed up for. So it's not just about giving pills to somebody and taking care of that particular person, as much as taking care of the entire family, perhaps the extended family, and the household, including, cleaning, doing laundry, and recycling.
Right.
On their behalf.
Oh, yeah, because I think what I have seen over and over again is that, a lot of the rhetoric surrounding immigration and immigrant labor is that, well, we're getting these low-skilled people coming over here, and they take all the, low-pay jobs that nobody else wants, and they're a burden on the society because they require social services more than other people, all this stuff. So it's this image of this person that's like, oh, I am an ignorant peasant, and I'm just think I'm going to go to this other country and I'm going to find fame and fortune, or at least an easy spot. And then they come there, and of course that's not what they find. But the truth often seems to be that you have sort of upscale, educated people coming and being forced into low-wage, low-skilled jobs because they can't get anything else. And employers love this because it's like, hey, I've got this really smart, motivated person who will work for next to nothing and do all this crap work for me that I don't want to do, but I can depend on them because they're, they're bright. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think what makes this particularly endemic to Italian society is that even from women coming from, say, Eastern Europe, so EU, who can cross the frontier pretty easily, the obtaining a work permit and a resident permit for long term is contingent on a work contract.
Oh, okay.
So as an activist kind of told me or vented at me, I mean, many of these women end up feeling somewhat like hostages to their employers, even when they can establish a good relationship and in spite of still being able to earn more than what they would be making in their home countries. So just to complete the picture you were depicting, it can happen that a nurse, say from Kyrgyzstan or from Sri Lanka, comes to Italy on an invitation or on a short-term tourist visa, can find a job as a personal assistant.
Right.
But then when the employer goes and makes a contract, and not all of them do, they might declare this person as a part-time housekeeper even when the job he or she is performing, is one of a live-in personal assistant that is entitled, a couple of €100 more per month,
Yeah.
and more generous benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is definitely this exploitative
Yeah.
component to how immigration system is currently set up.
So it really behooves a lot of people to see that immigration laws and systems are not fixed.
No.
It's best for them if it remains just like it is, just a big mess, because then there's a lot of cheap labor out there,
Mm-hmm.
and it's easily exploitable, as you say,
Yeah.
and they don't have a lot of recourse. What are they going to do? You
Absolutely.
can quit and go back to your country. Go ahead.
Well,
if you-
I mean, I don't want to portray the migrants I spoke to, or migrants in general, just as helpless victims.
Okay, good.
That would not feel right, because in my experience, but also in sociology and anthropology,
Mm-hmm.
just to mention both of them, migrants are extremely capable of navigating hostile systems and
Mhm.
trying to at least make the best and figure out ways to make their daily lives better, or at least a little bit more bearable.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the fact that these strategies exist does not mean that the policy shouldn't be changed, by all means. Talking about, the nurses who become allegedly personal assistants and then are registered as part-time housekeepers.
Mm-hmm.
These women, for example, are very active in trying to network with the neighbors. As live-in workers, especially living in the houses of aging people, it can be a bit of a hazard for personal safety and for long-term stability.
Mm-hmm.
Elderly people who are, semi-independent are not likely to have, sadly, that many years ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately are also oftentimes the targets of burglars.
Oh, yeah.
People pretending to be repairmen, or doing some sort of advertisement and knocking on the door. And so there is this danger that migrant women are exposed to, as well as, the risk of losing their job, or, relationship between employers and employees in this line of work can go sour.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I've noticed from observations, but I've also spoken about, is their, attempt to, whenever they get to step outside, even just to take out the recyclables, or to do a little bit of grocery shopping, to, try and introduce themselves to whoever lives in the building, or to business people in the street, just, to make sure that their presence in the neighborhood is known
Yeah.
as a migrant worker. So, should they have to call for help, there is someone they can go to that's not necessarily the employer or their family. And, should they be wanting to transition to a different job, or just, keep an eye open for other job opportunities, then perhaps somebody in a business or in a church will say, oh, there's that nice person who works in my neighborhood. If you need an employer, let's ask them.